State and federal leaders are sounding the alarm bells on what they call California's dwindling supply of oil produced in-state.
We have an energy crisis in our state, and it looks like it is only going to intensify.
Republican lawmakers, including Congressman Vince Fong and State Assembly Member Stan Ellis, both of Bakersfield, say the imminent closure of two major California refineries, Valero in the Bay Area city of Benicia and Phillips 66 in Los Angeles, is concerning, with reports showing that could reduce the state's refining capacity by nearly 20%.
Wait a minute. If refineries keep shutting down, what does that do to all of the bases?
So the state of California is on the cusp of a fuel crisis in this great country, and the reason for that, or the reasons for that, are entirely self-made. They are caused by Democratic Party politicians within that state seeking to add on more and more environmental standards to gasoline and other forms of energy within their state, and guess what? It is backfiring in a big way, and that is why we've known for a while, with the announcement of these fuel refineries closing by year's end, that California, one of the wealthiest places in the entire world, largest individual state economy in this entire country, is on the cusp of a fuel crisis. And again, it is all the making of the Democratic Party. And this is what we're going to talk about today. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
Now, for those of you who are unaware, California has a unique gas situation that is different from every other state in the union. And the reason for this is that Democrats in the state of California, in the name of appeasing the global warming gods, actually passed a law requiring Californians to be sold a different blend of gasoline than is available anywhere in the entire country. And the reason they did this is because they thought it was a great virtue signal. And this, among many other reasons, is why regular ordinary residents in the state of California are paying exorbitant gas prices. Now, in addition to that, I will also point out that whenever you require something different to be created within your state that is different from the broader country, there are two things that can happen. One is that the industry within your state will adapt in order to function in that state, thus giving them a monopoly. And two, the other option is that the other states in the union will adapt to the California standards, but in this particular case, that is not what happened. Essentially, the refineries in California are the only ones in the entire country that can produce gasoline that can go in the cars in the state of California, which makes it extraordinarily expensive, and in addition to that, makes each refinery closing absolutely devastating for the state of California. Now, of course, Gavin Newsom and Democrats for years have tried to blame greedy fossil fuel companies for the higher prices within their state. They actually commissioned a study in order to prove that it was price gouging by these evil corporations. And what they ultimately ended up discovering in that study is that it is actually incredibly unprofitable for the oil companies and for the gas stations to produce and sell this crappy blend of gasoline mandated by the state of California. And the overwhelming difference between prices of California and any other state in the union are down to government policies. Their own study disputed their demagoguing narrative, and now, because they decided to ignore that reality, they are in a fuel crisis as more and more refineries, again, that were supposedly being run by the greediest of greediest capitalists with record profits, are set to close.
So the two refinery closures that everybody's been referring to really caught people's attention. And the reason being, we cannot afford to lose any more. We're of the entire world, we're the third largest consumer of gasoline as a state. And the only ones in front of us, United States of America and China. So we consume a lot of gasoline. We cannot have refineries close and limit the ability to provide fuel to Californians. So why did these two refineries get everybody's attention? That's 20% of the fuel supply of the state. So what happened is, in April, the governor got interested in this topic and said, I'm worried, and Energy Commission, go figure it out. That response came back to the governor and pointed out certain actions that have to be taken, and those are now going to be considered in the next 30 days.
Now, that segment about the refineries closing is actually from a couple of months ago, where they were talking about the absolute devastation that would have if these refineries were to close, and how recommendations were sent to Gavin Newsom's desk in order to address this particular issue. And yeah, obviously California is going to California, so 4 months later, we are still on that devastating trajectory, and it doesn't look like they have absolutely any way of solving these problems, even though, again, they have been identified time and time again, presented to the California state legislature. They just refuse to do so because they want to be able to say that they're leading the nation in the fight against climate change. Well, guess what? You're leading the nation in 20% of the gasoline being refined in those refineries getting closed, which is not something that's happening in the majority of this country. In fact, many of you are living in states where gas recently fell below $3, but guess what? State of California, oh well, too bad. They really wanted their special blend of gasoline, even if, again, it cost their residents absolutely everything. And again, this is just another thing in the state of California that compiles on other things, where they end up raising the cost for their residents, saying it's for a good cause, and want all the virtue and credit, even though those policies are the author of their citizens' perils. And by the way, Gavin Newsom signed like an emergency bill to allow normal gasoline to be sold in his state as of October 30th, but obviously you're still trying to go back to your previous standard. You're going to try to prop up these oil refineries in order to keep them open, and this leads us to the question, which is, if you're doing this in the name of climate change, and you're saying for sure you definitely don't need those refineries or oil and gas at all in your state, why are you now going out of your way to try to subsidize those refineries, again, that are dying due to the consequences of the policies that you promoted? And you promoted them in part because you said they were going to kill the refineries. And of course, the answer to those questions, like all of these questions, is that Gavin Newsom is trying to run for president. And it's really going to be embarrassing when there's a fuel crisis in the state of California in his last couple of years as governor, which is why he's trying these temporary fixes to show that he met the challenges of the day, and thus you should elect him to the presidency.
So, Congressman Fong, you recently warned in an op-ed about how California's loss of oil supply in the new year is a national security risk. What did you mean by that?
Well, I mean, we have an energy crisis in our state. We've known that for a while. When I served in the state legislature, the affordability crisis, one of the biggest frustrations was the price of gasoline and electricity. And now, as we were moving forward, the states of Arizona and Nevada are very concerned about their gasoline supply. If refineries begin to close, we're going to lose 20% of our refining capacity pretty much overnight.
So here we have Representative Fong, who is a Republican representative out of the state of California, that of course California will likely gerrymander his seat away, making the case that not only is this a disaster in terms of affordability for the state of California, but it's actually a disaster in terms of readiness for our armed services, because the U.S. military is dependent on these refineries in order to make fuel for jets, for ships, and whatnot, in order to protect our nation's western half.
And now, with this new report coming out from the University of Southern California in partnership with Assemblymember Stan Ellis, we now are looking at a national security crisis. The jet fuel, the diesel, the gasoline that powers our military is created and formulated by our refineries. You look at the refinery in Valero, they are one of the major jet fuel providers to a lot of the military installations in Northern California. So now we are compounding everything, not only domestically in California, but now globally, if our military readiness is now going to be put in jeopardy because of these short-sighted policies, not only coming from the Newsom administration, but in the past from the Biden administration.
Which again, assuming all of that is true, why did we let California do this? Why did we let the biggest state in our union with the largest economy, again, a state that covers a huge portion of the west coast of the continental United States, actively go out of their way to destroy the oil market, to destroy these refineries in the name of climate change and Gavin Newsom's presidential prospects, if it actually risks our national security security in order to do so. Because again, this has been a problem for an extended period of time. And the response from California Democrats to the problems that they created with their obsession with climate change has been to blame the oil refineries themselves, say something about record profits, even though again, it's not supported by the data. You don't close refineries if your refineries are getting record profits. If you're absolutely killing it financially, you close them because you're not making money. And the reason you're not making money is because California has designed a system to make sure that they make as little as possible, because they've actively said they want to kill the fossil fuel industry. And what's crazy about this is that they didn't even push to replace domestic energy production with nuclear power. You know, the one that actually works, the one that actually doesn't produce any carbon, the safest energy, by the way, despite what you've been propagandized to believe your whole life. That's off the table. They want to do windmills and solar panels and whatever goofy, stupid ass idea you could possibly think of, California gets on board with, while again, blaming the oil companies for the policies that they implemented.
And in addition to that, for the last few months, we've been hearing warnings about the San Pablo Bay pipeline shutting down, which I understand carries fuel from the Central Valley to the Bay Area. I mean, what are you hearing with that?
Well, to your viewers, I mean, the way that energy is produced in California is a three-legged stool. We need domestic production. If we don't get domestic production, then that oil and gasoline is imported from foreign countries. And then, of course, that oil has to, at least that is produced in California, has to get to the refineries somewhere. And the pipeline infrastructure in our state is critical. There is a major pipeline that goes from the Central Valley in Kern County that provides the oil to the Bay Area. That is the San Pablo pipeline right now. It is in jeopardy of closing. Right now, there is no gasoline or no oil to make gasoline that is flowing through it. And so it is in jeopardy of closing. The PUC is, of course, taking some emergency action to try to keep it afloat, but you can't do that month after month. You need volume certainty. So there has to be a minimum flow of oil that you can put into the pipeline to keep it functional. If that pipeline closes, then, you know, how is our refineries going to get the oil that is produced domestically? It can't. And so that has to be shipped to our ports and imported from overseas.
This is so stupid. It's so ridiculous. Why did we allow this to happen? Why did we allow the state of California? And yes, there are some rules and regulations from the Biden administration that didn't help, but make no mistake about it, largely this is the state of California to do this to our nation, to do this to our citizens. Again, if you have these broad national security implications of these stupid ass actions. Again, the left wing has declared war on pipelines, despite the fact that it's one of the most efficient ways to move energy product around the country, and that product still needs to be moved and usually gets moved in dirtier ways, and we've allowed them to have their games to make a mess of the situation. And look where we are right now. Look at the discussion that we're having about these refineries and not even being able to get the supply of oil, us having to come up with alternatives to ship it there when we don't need to do this. We never needed to do this. It's ridiculous that it was tried, but again, they did it for the global warming gods. And by the way, if you were a politician, the reaction to these proposals should have been as follows.
Like, no, we're not doing that. That's embarrassing.
But unfortunately, California never does anything rational. They never do anything reasonable. So now we're stuck in this crap situation for our entire country where this one dumbass state ended up crippling us. And again, this should be something that they could address, or the federal government could address, because you're supposed to maintain the flow of interstate commerce. And obviously, because of previous court rulings, even commerce contained within states has been regulated in the past. So if you were ever going to use that extended power of the Commerce Clause, this would be the place to do it, but nobody does it because, oh my god, you gotta have your global warming regulations. This seems to be sensible to some idiots on the left wing. Therefore, this is where we are in the state of California, and it's just embarrassing. Now, of course, I want to know what you guys think about this down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social medias, support me via support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about self-inflicted madness in California. Till next time.